In this video, I want to talk about nervous system. So our nervous system is a complex network that coordinates our body's voluntary and involuntary actions and transmits signals between different parts of the body. It is divided into two anatomical divisions: the central nervous system, CNS, which consists of the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, PNS, which consists of all the nerves and neurons outside of the central nervous system. Now, if we were to look at the cross-section of the spinal cord, we would find there are three types of neurons that are of importance to us. Number one, afferent neurons, which carry signals to the CNS from sensory receptors in peripheral tissues. Number two, efferent neurons that carry signals from the CNS to the effector organs such as muscle. And number three, interneurons, which are located in between afferent and efferent neurons and integrate information that flows between the two. So, for example, if you touched a hot object, sensory receptors located in your fingers would immediately initiate a signal that would travel through afferent neurons to the spinal cord, and then from there a response signal would be initiated and would travel from the spinal cord through efferent neurons to the muscles in your hand, which would result in reflexive withdrawal of the hand. And all this would happen in just a fraction of a millisecond. Now let's take a closer look at the functions of sympathetic and parasympathetic system. So I'm going to draw sympathetic division on the left side and parasympathetic division on the right side. But first, let's quickly talk about the types of neurons that we find in both of these divisions. First, we have cholinergic neurons, which use neurotransmitter acetylcholine to send messages, and I'm going to use the red color to draw them. And the second, we have adrenergic neurons, which use neurotransmitters norepinephrine and epinephrine to send messages. And I'm going to use color blue to draw them. Now, let's focus on sympathetic division first. So, sympathetic neurons arise from the thoracic and lumbar regions of the spinal cord. And first, we have preganglionic neurons, which originate directly from the spinal cord. They are short and they release acetylcholine, so they are cholinergic. And they synapse with postganglionic neurons, which are long and release norepinephrine, so they are the adrenergic neurons. And for simplicity and to conserve some space, I'm going to skip drawing sympathetic ganglion, but just keep in mind that there's this chain of synaptic connections of sympathetic neurons that lies alongside the spinal cord. So now let's talk about how sympathetic neurons affect each part or organ of our bodies. So sympathetic nervous system is responsible for fight or flight response, and the activation of the system leads to the following: dilation of pupils, inhibition of salivation, relaxation of airways, acceleration of the heartbeat, inhibition of digestion, stimulation of glucose release from the liver, inhibition of gallbladder, inhibition of intestines activity, stimulation of adrenal medulla, which results in secretion of epinephrine and norepinephrine, relaxation of urinary bladder, and stimulation of ejaculation or vaginal contraction. And just to clarify, the adrenal medulla is the only autonomic neuroeffector organ which is innervated by one long sympathetic cholinergic neuron. On the other side, we have parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for rest and digest response. Parasympathetic neurons arise from cranial nerves 3, 7, 9, and 10, and the sacral region S2 to S4. In contrast to sympathetic division, parasympathetic preganglionic neurons are long and postganglionic neurons are short, and they actually both release neurotransmitter acetylcholine. So the activity of parasympathetic division would have the opposite effect of sympathetic stimulation and would result in the following: constriction of pupil, stimulation of salivation, constriction of airways, slowing of the heartbeat, stimulation of digestion, stimulation of glucose uptake,